So today we're going to talk about what you're going to be doing during and after SHTF. Now, everybody on YouTube seems to have these fantasies on what they're going to do after SHTF and, all of the get-rich-quick schemes and, warlord schemes and all that crap. But what it comes down to is if your community, your group, your town, your city wants to reconnect with society, you're probably going to have to do it yourself. So you're going to have to build your own logistical support. You're going to have to open the transportation routes yourself. Now, what I like is a lot of these older field manuals. This engineering field manual is from 1918. And from World War II back, there's a lot of emphasis on small bridges, road building, use of rubble in the construction of roads, how to make improvised pile drivers, how to make improvised equipment which you can use to build roads and infrastructure. And this is what you're actually going to be doing. They knew in World War II there would not be enough bridging equipment and construction equipment in order to support the massive armies in the field. So they had to actually ration that material in theater. And they would use mass amounts of labor and primitive tools to supplement that, and in some cases to do the bulk of the work, while the traditional construction equipment and fuel was used for extreme priority. And native population, local population, military, and labor units were used with hand tools and improvised equipment in order to do the bulk of the work. Now, I've talked extensively about the collection of rubble, processing of rubble, how it's used to build crib walls, roads, fortifications, structures, all kinds of things. And what I'm going to do is go through this engineering field manual, and we're going to show you a lot of things that are no longer included in today's manuals. And the reason for that is most modern armies have bridging equipment that'll go between 30 and 60 feet. So they don't teach and emphasize how to make small bridges anymore. And that's a big mistake, because in an E&P environment, a lot of construction equipment is not going to function. In a fuel shortage environment, you're going to only be using your equipment for stuff you can't do manually. So let's say you've got 1,000 gallons of diesel fuel. You're going to ration that in your construction endeavors for necessities, where you're going to use manual methods to preserve that fuel supply. So this book belonged to the commanding officer of the 65th Infantry Division. So this is a World War I book. The 65th apparently was stationed in San Juan, Puerto Rico at some point after the war. And I'm going to give you some videos at the end of this. It's called Road Building in France in 1917. And it's going to show you these methods and equipment that's actually in use. So that'll be very interesting, because you'll be seeing how to actually apply all of this equipment and methodology. The first thing I'm going to show you here is a improvised pile driver that you can build yourself. And in the video I'm going to give you, it'll show 20 men pulling the rope on this up and down in order to drive piles. So you can go into the woods, cut this lumber, and you don't even have to mill it. You can actually build a pile driver with green lumber, and it'll work. Now, what we'll do is we'll go to a close-up here so you can see the actual dimensions. And what I've done over the past is I've given you the ability to do screenshots in either Word or PowerPoint on all my old videos. And I've shown you stuff that is only available in one source in many cases. And what happens with that is nowhere in the military have they actually gathered together all of the material that you need to survive and to build things in an improvised and expedient environment. And the videos I've done, if you look back through the 600 plus videos, you can take and make yourself a Word document or a PowerPoint document, and you can take all of these drawings and you can make a 500 or 600 page book, and it gives you the diagrams on how to do all of this. I would highly suggest that you do that. Now, this is an interesting pier system. This one sets on a sill beam, and what it does is it uses a container system. So what happens is in between these piers, you have these boards that go across, and you fill that with ballast rock, gravel, whatever it is to weight this down. And I've seen that used, and it's a very effective way to do a quick installation of a pier system without driving any piles. So here's some close-ups of the pockets for the ballast. You can see the view of how it sits. This is another improvised pile driver that you can build. Now remember, these drawings are from World War I, so most of this is not going to be available online. Now, I've talked extensively, and I've probably beat the dead horse on cribs, using logs and timber cribs, but this is another good shot of how to make them. These can be bridge abutments, they can be pier systems for bridges. You can use these to make above ground nuclear blast and fallout shelters. You can use these to make fortifications and walls. You're going to be doing a lot of this. And keep in mind, all the methodology I'm showing you, you can utilize local materials. So you can use rubble, you can use gravel, anything you can salvage like that, broken concrete, and you can cut the trees, you can salvage lumber to build and utilize this. Now, this is a matting method that I haven't seen used in many years. And this one is a wood frame mat filled with rubble. And what they do is they put this on the bottom of a muddy river to give you a base to work off of. So you can also use this under buildings and fortifications. So what you're doing here is you're building a mud mat using a timber system with rubble fill or riprap filling. And it's showing you here, we're starting at this level and we're dropping this in the water as we go. So we're actually taking and displacing in the mud and reinforcing the bottom of this river. So you could use this as a base to put additional riprap on and make a ford rather than a bridge, or you could use this as a base for a timber trestle bridge. We'll give you a close-up so you can do a screenshot. Now, one of the problems you always have is you may not have the capability to put piers in, or the river is so wide that building a frame superstructure would take so long you'd never finish it. Or you have a shortage of proper sized timber beams. In this case, you can make a pontoon bridge, and I'm going to show you several ways to do that from improvised materials. Now, this one, they're using wooden barrels from the World War I era. But what you would do is substitute 55-gallon drums, steel drums that are commonly found everywhere today. So you can see here, this is a road frame, and you can float these together and then put a plank road over top of it, connect them together. So this is the basis that you would put a timber frame on. And it's showing you exactly how many barrels, which you would substitute 55-gallon drums to use to build this. So this is one way to make an improvised pontoon bridge. Now what we're looking at here is we have different pontoon boats or barges, and we're building a wood frame deck on it. And we're just showing how you can build sections beside the shore and float them out. This is showing how this is assembled. Now, a little later on, we're going to show you how to build a wooden pontoon out of planks and timbers. Now, this is one type of pontoon boat that you can manufacture using timber, planks, plywood. And if you're thinking about this, if you have limited supplies, you can build like 4 pontoon boats or 6 pontoon boats, depending on your weight that you want to carry. And you can use a cable system and float your cargo in vehicles across a river. So you don't necessarily have to build an entire pontoon bridge. You can build several sets of pontoon boats with a frame on top, and you can use a cable system or a motor system if you have it, and move cargo across a river. Now what I'm going to do is give you some close-ups so you can see dimensions. Now, this is a simplified barge. So you can actually build barges, and I've done a lot of projects working off of barges in the ocean, in rivers, around dams and stuff. This is a barge that you can utilize as a pontoon or a work platform. And we'll give you close-ups here so you can get dimensions. Now, here's some more details from the following page. And this is showing you how the planks fit on here and how they're spaced. Like I said, you can screen capture all this and build yourself a book that shows you how to do all these things. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is low weight range bridges. And in your survival efforts, you do not necessarily have to build a bridge heavy enough to put an M1 Abrams over. If you need to, in order to salvage material or to set up a courier system or a version of the Ho Chi Minh Trail in your neighborhood, you can do low weight range bridges. This is one that was used a lot up until the end of World War I, and then it kind of seems to disappear. And what happens is this uses counterweights. So you have a counterweight here, and then you have two logs that are basically wire wrapped or roped together with a third log to make a bridge. So your initial construction, you dig a hole, you put a weight here, you set the structure up, you lash this together. Construction, you have an identical construction on the other side of the bridge to this. So this shows one side, you have identical copy on the other, you lash them together. This is the actual framework. You're using 4 logs, and then you plank it. And then you add your ballast to the back. Okay. And what this does is it gives you the capacity to move light vehicles and horse-drawn equipment, carriages, wagons. And you can see here how the ballast is offset to the side here. And here's details of how the material is tied together. Now, one thing I've always talked about in the past is using 1 ton, 1.5 ton vehicles, 3/4 ton pickups and 1 ton pickups in order to do logistics. And then light single axle dump trucks, because it eases your burden on road building, bridge building, and culvert building. Now, one class, when I was young, a vehicle you can get here is the K trucks from Japan. Basically, you've got a 3,000 pound vehicle that has a 1/2 ton capability. And they would be ideal for survival use. Of course, the U.S. government doesn't want them imported here. But you can get older ones, utilize that. That's one area I was looking at experimenting in the future, is utilizing some of the K trucks. Now, this is another bridge design, and this is for a 30-foot span. This uses material you can cut from logs with one exception. And this is a truss bridge. Here's your materials list. Now, what you'll notice is there's a rod. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's the 6th item from the bottom. It's 9 foot, 6 inches long. And I believe it's 1 1/8 inch in diameter. These rods are the hard part to find to build this these days. Everything else is common. And this is a low weight range bridge you could use for small vehicles, horse-drawn carriages, and foot traffic. That would be fairly easy to build. And you could have these rods made from salvage material. So here's your close-ups. We'll give you another shot of the material list. There we go. Get rid of the shadow. Now, Macadan roads are basically the old name for rubble fill roads. These have been used throughout history. You use varying sizes of rock and stuff. And then there is a different version of a Macadan road where you use huge boulders and they're hand fitted together and chalked in place using other rocks. And I've seen that method used once because it's very labor intensive. where if you do the Macadan road with rubble fill, you can just dump the stuff using whatever conveyance you can use. Now, one of the interesting things I found here are charcoal roads. The only reference to charcoal roads I've ever found are in this book. And what the charcoal road is for is in a situation in a swamp where you can't utilize a Macadan road because the stuff just disappears. What they do is they take and stack logs 4 to 8 foot tall, and they burn them in a situation where they're covered with dirt to produce charcoal. And what you end up with is about 4 foot of charcoal, and then that is used as a road base to build on top of. And it's interesting, I found that World War I road building video when I was searching for more info on charcoal roads, but my internet search on charcoal roads has been unsuccessful. I haven't used that as a methodology, but it's something we need to investigate. Now, the last thing we want to look at today before we get to the videos is some field fortifications. I like this one because it uses a small log in the center and then logs as cross pieces, and that's what your barbed wire, concertina wire, or whatever you have goes on. This is pretty easy to build from improvised materials. This is another one where you use an X's and a cross piece. And then here, this one is excellent, especially in snow or swamp areas. These seem to be able to sit on top of bad subsurfaces. So these are little tripods or pyramids. Now, this is a fortification that's been used for probably 150 years. And what we have here is the side view, and this can be a covered trench or it can be an independent pillbox or bunker. This is looking down on it, and it gives you the dimensions, and it gives you a weapons platform here if you're using something other than a rifle or a submachine gun. Now, this provides you a whole lot of cover that is good for use against artillery, direct or indirect fire. Now, if you're going to do demolition work using explosives, this handbook made in 1918 is one of the best ones I've seen for showing you where to place charges to do demolition work, and showing you how the forces transmit, how things fracture and break. Here's a few more photographs showing where to place charges on different kinds of bridging. And then we have really good coverage of demolition against railroads. Railroads were extremely common, and they were the basis of logistics and resupply, not trucks and vehicles and aircraft in World War I. So there's an extensive amount of information on where to place charges to demolish railroads in this book. So that kind of finishes up our survey of the 1918 Engineering Field Manual from the U.S. military in World War I. And what I want you to do is watch the entirety of these 2 videos. It's going to be about a half an hour, and it's actually going to show people using these methods. And what I want you to focus on is how they are tearing down different damaged buildings and structures, and then processing and utilizing that material to build roads. And it also shows you the use of an improvised pile driver. So I'll give you screenshots of those videos. Please leave your comments. We'll see you on the next video.